The stars above Miriax Prime always looked calm. They shimmered like jewels scattered across the black sea of space, watching silently as civilizations rose and fell. Among those stars lived the Miriax people, a race of scholars, artists, and scientists who had long abandoned war. For thousands of years, they had built their world on peace, reason, and understanding. In the Grand Library of Alien Spire, one of the most respected institutions of the galaxy, worked a brilliant young scholar named Dr. Kira Valen. She had golden-gray skin that reflected the light of the twin suns and eyes that shimmered with curiosity. Her field was xenohistory, the study of ancient species that no longer existed. Kira's favorite subject was not mathematics or art but legends, the kind of stories that her colleagues often dismissed as fantasy. She studied tales of lost empires, ancient heroes, and forgotten species. But one legend fascinated her more than all others: the legend of humans. According to the oldest galactic records, humans were one of the first spacefaring species. They spread through the stars faster than anyone had before them. Their ships were crude but brave, their technology simple but effective. What made them remarkable was not their strength or their weapons, but their will to survive. Every account described humans as beings of unbreakable spirit. They fought until their last breath, no matter how hopeless the situation. They built worlds from dust, turned deserts into homes, and faced enemies much stronger than themselves. Yet one day they simply disappeared. Most historians said humans destroyed themselves through war. Others claimed they were wiped out by a cosmic disaster. But in time, the truth was forgotten and the stories turned into myths. Kira didn't believe in them. Not really. To her, humans were just fairy tales, old stories told by soldiers and children to inspire courage. But still, she found them fascinating. Whenever she read about their wars of honor or bravery under fire, she felt something stir in her chest, a strange respect for these imaginary beings. One calm evening, Kira sat alone in her study surrounded by glowing data screens. She was reading a translated fragment of a Terran archive, one of the few surviving human documents. The text was damaged, but one line stood out clearly: "We fight not because we can win, but because we must not lose what makes us human." Kira leaned back and smiled faintly. "Poetic," she murmured, "but clearly made up. No one could live like that." Just then, the door to her study opened with a soft chime. Professor Ralten, her mentor and an elderly Miriax historian, stepped inside. His voice was calm as always. "Kira," he said, "you've been reading those old myths again, haven't you?" Kira laughed lightly. "You know me too well, Professor, but it's fascinating how many species recorded stories about humans. Even the Taravi archives mention them." Ralten nodded. "Yes, but remember, myths are reflections of what people wish existed. Perhaps other species imagined the humans because they wanted to believe in courage." Kira looked thoughtful. Or maybe they were real once. Maybe they inspired courage because they actually lived it. The professor gave her a kind smile. "You have a romantic heart for a scholar, Kira. But I'm afraid the universe doesn't keep such heroes anymore. Only equations and facts." He turned to leave, but before the door closed, he added, "By the way, the Exploration Council sent a message for you. There's a new expedition forming. Something about a strange signal from the Epsilon Eridani system. They want a historian on board." Kira frowned. "A signal? From where?" "An ancient outpost," Ralten replied. "Possibly human in origin. But don't get your hopes up. It's probably another false reading." When he left, Kira sat silently for a long time. Her eyes moved back to the glowing words on her screen. "We fight not because we can win, but because we must not lose what makes us human." Something deep inside her whispered, "Go." 3 weeks later, Kira found herself standing inside the vast docking bay of the exploration vessel Luminous Path. The ship was a marvel of Miriax engineering, long, silver, and graceful, designed for study and diplomacy, not combat. Around her, scientists, technicians, and explorers hurried to load equipment and supplies. As the engines hummed to life, Kira felt both nervous and excited. She had traveled to many worlds before, but this one was different. This mission was about finding the truth behind a legend. Captain Siren Halor, a calm and professional officer, welcomed the team aboard. "Our mission," he explained, is to investigate an unidentified signal of pre-ascension technology orbiting a dead planet in the Epsilon Eridani system. Some believe it may belong to the lost Terran species. Our goal is simple: record and recover whatever we find. Kira listened carefully, trying not to let her imagination run wild. Still, her heart beat faster. Could it really be human? During the journey, she spent her time reading every known Terran record. She studied their wars, their inventions, and their strange emotional culture. Humans, according to the archives, were driven by feelings: love, anger, hope, fear. Yet they turned those feelings into strength. They didn't evolve for perfection. They adapted for survival. Sometimes she wondered, what kind of people were they, really? Were they noble, as the legend said, or dangerous, as some feared? She couldn't decide. After several days of travel through the silent dark, the ship finally entered orbit around the Epsilon Eridani system. The star was old and dim, surrounded by debris and broken moons. On the third planet, their scanners detected a massive station in orbit. The structure was enormous, circular, dark, and scarred by centuries of damage. It looked unlike any known Myriax or alien design. Captain Halor ordered a scan. The computer reported something unusual. Structure detected. Composition: titanium alloys and carbon steel. Age estimated 2,000 years. Energy source dormant. Signal origin: internal beacon. Kira stared at the holographic display. Titanium and carbon steel. That's ancient Terran material. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. No one spoke for a moment. Halor finally said, "Prepare a landing team. We'll investigate." Inside the outpost, everything was silent. Their lights pierced through centuries of darkness, revealing empty corridors covered in dust and rust. The walls were lined with faded symbols: stars, wings, and a circle enclosing a blue planet. Kira walked slowly, her heart pounding. Every step echoed like a heartbeat through the forgotten hallways. She touched one of the walls gently. "They built this," she whispered. The crew found several rooms filled with broken machines and old data terminals. Most were dead, but one console still flickered weakly. Kira hurried to it, connecting her translator. Slowly, the screen came to life. Words appeared, written in ancient human English. Terran Outpost 7, last entry, year 2786. Status: cryostasis engaged. Kira's eyes widened. Cryostasis? A faint hum echoed through the room. The lights above began to flicker. Somewhere deep within the station, something was still alive. Captain Halor signaled his team. "Stay alert. We might not be alone." They followed the sound down a long corridor until they reached a heavy metal door sealed by layers of frost. The scanner detected faint life signs behind it. One single reading. Kira's voice trembled slightly. "It's impossible. It's human." The captain hesitated. "If that's true, we're about to meet a ghost from 2,000 years ago." The door slowly opened, releasing a cloud of cold mist. Inside was a large cryo chamber with a single pod still active. Through the frost-covered glass, they could see a tall figure wearing dark, ancient armor. His face was peaceful, his body perfectly preserved. Kira took a slow step forward, unable to breathe. The old stories, the myths, the fairy tales, they all came rushing back. A line from her studies whispered in her mind, "Humans do not fade. They wait." And as she stood before that sleeping warrior, Kira realized the truth she had always denied. The legends were real. The fairy tales had a heartbeat. The moment the cryo chamber opened, a soft mist spread through the cold metallic room. The faint hum of old machinery echoed around the Myriax explorers. Blue lights flickered to life on the floor one after another, like the heartbeat of something ancient finally waking from a deep sleep. Dr. Kira Valen stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the man inside the glass pod. His face was calm yet strong, as if carved by time itself. His armor was worn but still gleamed faintly under the dim lights. The markings on his chest plate were faded, but one symbol remained clear: a blue circle with white stars and a small curved line beneath it. Kira knew that symbol. Every ancient record she had ever studied showed it. It was the Terran emblem, the mark of humanity. "Captain," one of the crew whispered nervously. "He's alive." Captain Saran Halor stepped forward, his expression calm but tense. "Life signs confirm it," said the medical officer, checking her scanner. "Heart rate is slow but steady. Cryosystems are still running after 2,000 years. It's impossible but true." Kira's voice trembled slightly. He's human. A real one. Not a legend. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the chamber and the faint rhythmic beeping of the pod's sensors. The air felt heavy with history. Finally, Haler gave the order. Begin revival protocol. Slowly. I don't want to harm him. The crew worked carefully, connecting cables and activating translation software. Steam hissed from the chamber as its ancient systems came to life. The lights on the pod changed from blue to green. Kira stepped closer, unable to look away. Her heart beat faster. She remembered how she had once called human warriors fairy tales, stories made to give children hope. And now one of those stories was sleeping right in front of her. The process took hours. As the final sequence began, the chamber released a loud hiss and the glass cover lifted slowly. The air was cold and sharp. The human inside took a long, shaky breath, his chest rising. His eyes fluttered open. For a second he looked confused, lost between centuries. Then his gaze sharpened. He looked around the room at the strange beings before him, tall, silver-skinned, with luminous eyes. Kira took an uncertain step forward and spoke softly. "Can you hear me?" The man blinked. His voice came out hoarse but steady. "Where am I?" Her translator earpiece instantly converted his language. The sound of his words filled the room like thunder, deep and full of weight. "You're aboard the Myriax ship Luminous Path," Kira said carefully. "We found your station. You've been in cryosleep for a very long time." He frowned as if trying to remember something. "Cryosleep. Mission status?" Kira hesitated. "The war you were fighting ended a long time ago. You've been asleep for over 2,000 years. The man's face tightened. His hand gripped the edge of the chamber. 2,000 years, he whispered. Then humanity. He didn't finish. His voice broke for just a moment. The silence in the room grew heavy. Later, the human sat in the medical bay while Kira and the captain stood nearby. The scanners confirmed he was fully recovered, his body in remarkable condition. The Myriax scientists were fascinated. His muscles, bones, and heart all showed extraordinary resilience. Even after centuries of frozen sleep, he looked ready for battle. Kira finally asked, "What is your name?" He turned his gaze to her. His eyes were blue, clear, sharp, and filled with quiet strength. "Captain Daniel Holt," he said. "United Terran Defense Fleet, Outpost 7. The name echoed in the room like a forgotten song. Kira felt something stir deep inside her, a strange respect she couldn't explain. "Captain Holt," said Haler, "do you remember what happened before you entered cryosleep?" Holt nodded slowly. "We were holding this sector against an enemy we called the Wraith System, a swarm of self-replicating machines. We had orders to delay them while the civilian colonies evacuated. When the last transport escaped, we triggered the cryo sequence. We were supposed to wake when the signal went silent." Kira looked at him in disbelief. "You fought the Wraiths? Those are only legends too. Ancient records say they were impossible to defeat." "They were real," Holt said quietly. "And if the signal brought you here, it means they're moving again." His words sent a chill through the room. Kira spent the following days studying the outpost systems with Holt's help. The human moved with calm confidence, his every motion precise. He seemed to know every corridor, every code. The Myriax crew followed his instructions, fascinated by the way he handled ancient technology like it was new. As they worked, Kira found herself watching him often. He was different from anyone she had ever met, not just in form but in spirit. Even after learning that his entire species might be gone, he didn't show despair. He simply continued his duty. One evening, while they were examining an old communications array, Kira asked, "You don't seem sad about humanity." Holt smiled faintly. "Sadness doesn't change anything, Doctor. We always knew humanity wouldn't last forever, but our purpose wasn't to live forever. It was to make sure others could." Kira didn't know how to answer. She had spent her life believing strength came from peace and knowledge. Yet this man, who came from a world of war and hardship, carried a strength that felt different, quiet, unshakable, and deeply human. The next morning, Holt requested access to the outpost's central core. With the captain's permission, they entered the main control chamber. It was vast and silent, filled with ancient consoles. In the center stood a glowing pillar of light, the heart of the station. Holt activated the interface. The screens came alive, projecting streams of data and star maps. His expression darkened. "What is it?" Kira asked. He pointed at the display. This is the Wraith network. It's still active. They've been rebuilding for centuries, hidden in the dark systems beyond charted space. Captain Halor frowned. "How can you be sure?" "Because I built this tracker myself," Holt said. "We left it running to warn us if the Wraiths ever reactivated." "That's the signal you found. They're awake again." The room went silent. Kira felt her throat tighten. "If that's true, the galaxy could be in danger." Holt nodded slowly. "Yes, and this time you won't have the Terran fleets to stop them." That night, as the ship's crew debated their next move, Kira sat alone in the viewing deck. The stars outside seemed colder now. The calm peace of the galaxy suddenly felt fragile, like glass waiting to crack. She thought about everything she had learned. Humans were supposed to be gone. The Wraiths were supposed to be legends. Yet here they were, both real, both alive in their own ways. When the door opened behind her, she didn't need to turn to know who it was. Holt's reflection appeared in the glass beside hers. "You look troubled," he said. Kira gave a faint smile. "It's strange. I used to think your people were just stories. Brave heroes made up to inspire soldiers. But you're real. And so are your enemies." Holt looked out at the stars. "Stories often start from truth, Doctor. Sometimes the universe just forgets the rest." She turned toward him. "What are you going to do now?" He was silent for a moment before answering. "What I was trained to do. Protect life. If the Wraiths are returning, someone has to stand against them." "But you're only one man," Kira said softly. Holt smiled, a calm and steady smile that seemed to hold the fire of every human story ever told. One human was always enough to start something greater. When Kira returned to her quarters that night, she could not sleep. The image of the human warrior stayed in her mind, not as a myth, but as proof of something she had forgotten to believe in. The universe was vast, peaceful, and full of knowledge. But peace had made her people forget something essential, the courage to stand when the stars themselves seemed to fall. Now, she had met a being who carried that courage like a light in the dark. And for the first time, Kira began to believe that perhaps the legends were never lies at all. Perhaps they were warnings, reminders that even in peace, someone must be ready to fight for it. As the luminous path prepared to leave the ancient outpost, the human emblem still glowed faintly on the ruined walls, a circle, a planet, and a promise. And somewhere deep inside the ship, Captain Holt stood silently by a window, whispering to the stars, "Humanity may have fallen, but its duty never ends." The luminous path drifted silently above the ruined Terran outpost. Inside, lights glowed softly as the crew moved with quiet urgency. For days, the Myriac scientists had studied the data Holt recovered from the ancient computers. What they found frightened them. The Wraith system was real, and it was awake again. Dr. Kira Valen sat beside Captain Daniel Holt in the observation chamber. Outside, the cold light of the dying star reflected against his armor. He had cleaned and repaired it using spare materials from the ship, and now it gleamed faintly like something from another age. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. His eyes carried the weight of centuries. Kira finally broke the silence. "You've been through so much, yet you still look calm. Don't you feel fear?" Holt turned his gaze toward her. "Fear," he said softly. "Of course I do. But fear is a tool. If you control it, it sharpens your mind. If you let it control you, it ends you." Kira nodded slowly, thoughtful. The Myriacs were peaceful. They avoided danger whenever possible. But this human, he treated danger as something natural, something to face and master. That idea felt both strange and inspiring. Later that day, Captain Saren Haler called a meeting in the command room. The walls glowed with holographic displays showing the surrounding star systems. Red dots pulsed across the map. "The Wraith system," Haler said, pointing at the largest cluster of red. "According to Captain Holt's data, these machines are spreading again. They consume planets for raw material and replicate endlessly." Kira studied the map. "How many systems have they taken?" 4, possibly 5, Holt answered, his voice steady. "If they reach a core world, your entire civilization could be in danger." The room fell silent. Myriacs were not a military race. Their fleets were small and designed for science, not combat. Captain Halor looked at Holt. "What would you suggest we do, Captain?" Holt studied the display. His expression hardened into that of a commander once more. You can't fight them with weak fleets or indecision. They'll adapt to your weapons. You need strategy, coordination, and courage. Halor frowned slightly. We are not soldiers. Our people haven't fought in centuries. Holt turned toward him, eyes sharp. Then learn fast, because they won't stop. Kira could see the truth in Holt's voice. He wasn't trying to insult them. He was trying to wake them up. For him, war wasn't about glory. It was about survival. Over the next few days, Holt began training the ship's security crew. He taught them human military tactics, fast communication, teamwork, and improvisation. The Myriacs found his methods strange but effective. Don't wait for perfect plans, Holt said during one session. There's no such thing. In battle, hesitation kills. Act, adapt, and never stop moving. He showed them old human battle recordings from his suit's memory. Small teams fighting against overwhelming odds. The soldiers were fierce, shouting encouragement to one another even as their surroundings burned. They looked alive in a way Kira had never seen before. After one training session, Kira asked, "Why did your people fight like that?" "You could have run away," Holt smiled faintly. "Running doesn't save anyone for long. We fought because someone had to stand between the darkness and everyone else." His words echoed in Kira's mind long after he left the room. One evening, as they analyzed the Wraith data logs, Holt's face grew tense. "They're moving faster than I expected," he said quietly. "Their main swarm will reach the outer colonies within a month." Kira frowned. "Can't we warn the Galactic Council?" "We can," Holt said, "but they won't believe you until it's too late. Peaceful civilizations always hesitate to prepare for war." She sighed. "You sound as if you've seen this before." "I have," Holt replied. Before humanity fell, many species ignored the warnings. By the time they acted, the Wraiths had already devoured entire worlds. He stared out the window. "We fought them with everything we had and we won, but at a cost no one could imagine." Kira looked at him carefully. "How did you win?" Holt paused, his voice low. "We didn't win by being stronger. We won because we refused to stop. Even when our cities burned, we kept fighting. The machines couldn't understand that kind of will." For a long moment, Kira said nothing. She realized she was no longer speaking to a legend from history. She was speaking to the reason the galaxy still existed at all. The next day, the ship's sensors detected movement near the edge of the system. Dozens of dark shapes appeared on the radar. They were small, metallic, and fast. "Wraith scouts." "Confirmed," said the navigator. "They found us," alarms blared. The crew rushed to their stations. Captain Halor tried to issue commands, but confusion spread among the officers. The Myriacs had never fought a real battle before. Holt stepped forward calmly. "Captain, with your permission, let me take command of the defense." Halor hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Do it." In seconds, Holt's voice filled the command deck. "All crew, battle alert! Divert power to shields and point defense systems. Keep the ship moving. They'll target your engines first." Kira watched in awe as the humans' calm orders turned chaos into order. The crew followed his commands instinctively. The luminous path began to move with surprising precision, dodging the first wave of enemy fire. The Wraith drones attacked in swarms, their bodies glimmering with cold silver light. Energy blasts tore through the void, striking the ship's shields. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, but Holt never lost focus. "Fire on my mark," he ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. The ship's cannons fired a coordinated volley. The explosions lit up the darkness like a sunrise. Several drones shattered instantly, their fragments burning away in the vacuum. The bridge crew cheered softly, but Holt's tone stayed firm. "Don't celebrate yet. That was the easy part." The battle lasted nearly an hour. When the last drone was destroyed, the ship was damaged but alive. The Myriacs crew looked at Holt with astonishment and newfound respect. They had survived, because of him. After the battle, Kira found him in the engineering bay, helping repair damaged systems. His armor was scorched, his face covered in faint soot, but he didn't seem tired. "You saved us," she said softly. He looked up with a small smile. "You saved yourselves. You just needed someone to remind you how." Kira shook her head. "No, you reminded us what courage looks like." He chuckled quietly. "Maybe, but courage isn't mine alone, Doctor. It's something everyone carries. Most just forget it until the world demands it again." A few hours later, the council sent a message. They had detected the wraiths too. Panic was spreading across nearby systems. Fleets were being mobilized, scientists were searching for solutions, but time was running out. In the war room, Holt stood before the holographic map once again. "They'll come in waves," he said. "Thousands, maybe millions. You can't run. You'll have to stand your ground," Captain Halor asked. "And what about you, Captain Holt? What will you do?" Holt's expression didn't change. "I'll fight. It's what I was made for." Kira stepped closer. "You're only one man. You can't face them alone." Holt turned to her. "Then teach your people to fight beside me." For the first time, Kira saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Not anger, not pride, but hope. The kind of hope that humans once gave to the galaxy. That night, as the stars drifted outside her window, Kira wrote in her research journal, "The human we found is not just a survivor of a lost age. He is a living reminder of what strength truly means. He carries a courage that time could not erase, the kind that turns despair into purpose. Perhaps humanity never died. Perhaps it only sleeps in those who still dare to stand." As she closed her journal, she saw Holt walking alone along the viewing deck, staring at the stars as if listening to something far away. She wondered what he was thinking, perhaps of his fallen comrades or the worlds he once swore to protect. The ship was silent except for the soft hum of the engines. Yet in that silence, something new had awakened among the Myriax crew, a quiet determination that hadn't existed before. They had seen a glimpse of the human spirit, and it had changed them forever. The age of peace had been long and gentle, but now the galaxy was about to remember the fire it had forgotten. The system that once slept in silence now echoed with alarms and flashing red lights. The scanners of the Myriax fleet screamed warnings, detecting countless moving objects approaching from the edge of the system. Their formation was unnatural, perfect, cold, and mechanical. The wraiths had returned. Dr. Kira Valen stood in the command deck of the luminous path, her eyes wide as the holographic map showed thousands of red dots moving like a dark storm. The fleet commander, Admiral Serix, shouted for defensive formations, but his voice trembled. No one had seen anything like this before, but Captain Daniel Holt had. "They're machine swarms," Holt said firmly, his tone steady while everyone else panicked. "Each one can think, adapt, and destroy. Once they begin, they won't stop until everything living is gone." The crew looked at him, half afraid, half in awe. Holt stood tall in his dark battle armor, a symbol of a time when survival meant war. The ancient soldier looked at the incoming storm as if it were an old enemy returning to finish the job. Kira turned to him. "Can we stop them?" He met her eyes. "We can fight. That's what humans always did." The first wave hit within minutes. The black swarm descended upon the outer defense line. Myriax ships opened fire, their energy beams, lighting up the void, but the wraiths moved like smoke, splitting, reforming, adapting. They tore through the first line in seconds. Fragments of burning metal drifted past the Myriax flagship's viewports. Admiral Serix slammed his hand on the console. "Our weapons are useless. They learn too fast." Holt stepped forward. "Then stop using the same pattern. You're feeding them information." He began typing rapidly on the tactical console, rerouting energy weapons and changing attack frequencies. "Use random power spikes. Don't give them a rhythm to follow." The Admiral hesitated but obeyed. When the fleet followed Holt's commands, the results were instant. Several wraith clusters burst into light. Holt nodded slightly, his voice calm but commanding. "Good. Now we make them pay attention." Kira watched him closely. He was completely focused, every move precise. There was no fear in his eyes, only resolve. It was as if he had done this 1,000 times before. As the battle grew, Holt requested access to the old Terran outpost's control systems. "There are weapons here your people can't use," he said. "Humanity built this place for one reason, to stop the wraiths if they ever came back." Kira and her science team rushed to help him. They entered the ancient command center within the outpost. Dust and silence filled the room, but when Holt placed his armored hand on the console, the lights flickered alive. The system recognized him. Voice ID. "Captain Daniel Holt. United Terran Defense Command. The computer spoke in a deep, artificial tone. "Orders, Captain. Activate Planetary Defense Network," Holt ordered. "Authorization code, Archangel Prime." Massive cannons buried beneath the planet's surface came to life, glowing blue with ancient power. The ground shook as the long-sleeping weapons prepared to fire. From orbit, Myriak's ships watched in disbelief as the dead planet began to wake up. The cannons fired, giant beams of plasma cutting across space, tearing through wraith formations. Thousands of machines melted into nothingness. Cheers erupted on the Myriak's ships. For the first time, they saw hope. Kira looked at Holt. "You did it." Holt shook his head. "No, this is only the beginning. The wraiths never attack without learning. The next wave will be stronger." He was right. The second wave arrived with terrifying precision. The wraiths adapted to the new energy frequencies. They formed shields of magnetic fields reflecting plasma shots back toward the fleet. The outpost cannons began to overheat. Alarms blared. "Captain Holt," Admiral Sarix's voice echoed through the comms. "We can't hold. We're losing ships fast." Holt clenched his jaw. "Then we fight smarter." He looked to Kira. "Can your scientists connect to their swarm network?" Kira hesitated. "It's too dangerous. If we tap in, they could trace the signal back to us." "Do it anyway," Holt said. "We need to know how they think." She nodded. The team worked fast, linking their scanners to the swarm's digital web. The data that came through was horrifying. Millions of connected minds, a network of pure logic and destruction. And in the center, a single controlling intelligence, the Wraith Core. Holt studied the data. "That's our target." Hours passed. The battle became chaos. Debris floated like falling snow in space. Myriak's soldiers cried out as their ships fell apart. Holt took command of one of the smaller assault vessels, an old human fighter stored in the outpost's hangar. It was dented, rusted, but still operational. Kira followed him to the launch bay. "You're not serious. That ship's ancient. It can't match them." He smiled faintly. "Neither can I. But I don't have to match them. I just have to outthink them." She looked at him, fear and respect mixing in her voice. "You really are one of them. A human warrior." Holt lowered his visor. "No, I'm just doing what we always did. Protect the living." With that, the fighter's engines roared to life, and Holt shot into the black sky. His ship moved like lightning, weaving through enemy fire. He didn't fight with brute strength but with strategy. Each move was calculated, every shot placed with precision. He lured the wraiths toward the planet's defense grid, making them chase him into crossfire zones. From the command deck, Kira watched in awe. The legend was real. A human fighting not for survival alone but for others. Suddenly, Holt's voice came over the comms. "They're shifting. The core's moving into orbit. They're preparing to assimilate the outpost." Admiral Sarix panicked. "We can't stop that kind of power." "Yes, we can," Holt replied. "But it's going to take everything we have." He transmitted new coordinates to the Myriak's fleet. "Pull back and form a perimeter. I'll guide the defense cannons manually. We'll draw the core in close." Kira realized what he was planning. "You're using the outpost's self-destruct, aren't you?" Holt's silence confirmed it. "This station has a reactor big enough to vaporize the swarm. Someone has to stay behind to trigger it." Kira's heart pounded. There must be another way. "There isn't," he said softly. "But don't worry. This is what humans were made for." Minutes later, the sky above the planet turned red as the Wraith Core approached, massive, glowing, and full of swirling machines. Holt guided his fighter directly toward it, his voice steady over the radio. Kira tried to speak, but words failed her. She could only watch as the old human ship disappeared into the storm. Holt's last transmission came through clearly. "If humanity's gone, then I'll remind the stars what we were." The next moment, a blinding light filled the system. The planet's reactor ignited, consuming everything in a storm of energy. The wraiths vanished, one by one, until the scanner showed nothing but silence. The surviving Myriax ships drifted in quiet awe. The storm was gone. Holt's signal had vanished with it. Kira sat in silence, tears in her eyes, staring at the now dark planet. A legend, she realized, had come to life, and given his life to save them all. She whispered softly, "He was real. The human warrior was real." The bridge was silent, but deep within the stars something eternal remained. The legend of humanity, the courage, the sacrifice, the will to stand when all others fell, had once again been proven true. The galaxy had grown quiet again. After the blinding storm of the Wraith assault, the stars seemed peaceful as if nothing had happened. Yet those who survived knew the truth. Something ancient and dangerous had been stopped, and the cost had been high. Dr. Kira Valen sat alone on the observation deck of the luminous path, staring at the empty void where the Terran outpost once stood. The planet was now a dark, barren sphere, the reactor having obliterated the station and the Wraith core. The victory was total, but bittersweet. Her mind wandered back to Captain Daniel Holt. The legendary human had flown into the heart of the storm and never returned. Myriax records would never capture the moment. The stories of humanity she had studied for so long were true, but they had come to life before her eyes in a way no history book could describe. Kira thought about the legends she had once laughed at, calling human warriors fairy tales. Now, she realized they were far more than stories. They were reminders, tales of courage, endurance, and sacrifice that could inspire generations to come. The journey back to Myriax Prime was silent at first. The crew tended to repairs and calculated safe courses, but no one spoke much. The memory of battle lingered in the corridors like a ghost. When the fleet arrived in orbit above their homeworld, the citizens looked up, sensing the return of the luminous path. They knew something extraordinary had occurred, even if the details were unclear. Kira stepped off the ship first, carrying the data from the outpost and the memories of the human warrior. Scientists, scholars, and politicians crowded around her, eager for news. She began to speak, her voice steady but filled with awe. "Humans were real," she announced. "I saw one. He was not a legend or a story. He was a warrior, brave beyond measure, and he fought for all life. Not for power, not for conquest, but for duty and hope." Gasps and whispers spread through the crowd. Some refused to believe her, calling it a fairy tale, a scientist's imagination. But many others listened, wide-eyed, knowing that the courage of one could change the perspective of many. Over the next days, Kira shared every detail she could. The awakening of Captain Holt, his training of the Myriax crew, the battle with the Wraiths, and the final sacrifice that destroyed the core. She displayed holograms of the Terran outpost, the Wraith swarm, and the ruined planet. Children crowded around her during public demonstrations, their eyes shining. "So humans were real?" a small voice asked. Kira smiled. "Yes, and they were more than real. They were the kind of warriors who remind us why life is precious and why we must protect it." The adults listened as well, and slowly a sense of hope returned to the people of Myriax Prime. For centuries, their civilization had lived without war. They had avoided conflict and forgotten courage. Now through one human sacrifice they remembered. The legend of humanity was alive again, not as a myth but as truth. Among the scholars, some questioned whether the stories would inspire fear or hope. Kira addressed them in a lecture. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she explained. "It is the will to act even when fear is present. Captain Holt taught us that. Humanity lived in a dangerous galaxy and survived because they dared to act when others might have hidden. That is why they were great. And that is why even now they can still teach us something." Her words spread beyond the lecture halls. News vessels carried her message to nearby systems. Other civilizations began to speak of humans not as extinct creatures, but as heroes whose spirit could still guide those who would defend peace. Weeks passed, and Myriax Prime slowly rebuilt its outpost networks, this time with the lessons of humanity in mind. Defense systems were enhanced, fleet tactics were improved, and most importantly, soldiers and civilians alike learned that courage was the key to survival. Kira often walked through the rebuilt halls of the library, thinking about Holt. She had studied every record, every artifact, but nothing could compare to seeing a human in action. One evening, She stood before a newly installed memorial, a simple plaque in the center of the library, etched with the Terran emblem, a circle, a blue planet, and white stars. Below it, the words read, "For those who fight so others may live, humanity never dies, it endures in courage." Kira placed her hand gently on the metal. She felt as if Holt's presence lingered there, watching, guiding, reminding them all that bravery is timeless. Months later, Kira received a signal from deep space. It was faint, irregular, almost like a heartbeat. The Myriax fleet triangulated its position, somewhere near an uncharted system far beyond the Wraith attack zone. Could it be another human? Kira whispered, her heart racing. Holt had always believed that humanity's duty never truly ended. Perhaps, she thought, there were others, survivors waiting hidden among the stars. Or perhaps this was a sign, a final message left behind by the captain. A call to remember the courage that humans embodied. She turned to the fleet commander. "Prepare an exploration team. We need to find out." The commander hesitated. "Doctor, are you certain?" Kira smiled. "Courage is worth the risk. Holt showed us that." The story of humanity began to spread beyond Myriax Prime. Scholars wrote new texts about the human warrior who had saved entire systems. Poets and artists created works inspired by the Terran spirit. Children played games imagining themselves as humans, defenders of the galaxy. Even the older generations, long accustomed to peace, found themselves inspired. They realized that wisdom and knowledge were not enough. Courage, determination, and the willingness to stand against impossible odds were just as important. Kira watched it all, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had doubted the legends once, calling them fairy tales. Now she understood. Legends are born from truth, and heroes live on not just in stories but in the actions they inspire. One night, Kira sat alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Somewhere in the vastness of space, she imagined Captain Holt flying among them, a solitary warrior carrying the light of humanity. She whispered softly as if sending her words into the cosmos. "Thank you, Captain Holt, for showing us what courage really means, for proving that even in the darkest times one being can make all the difference." A gentle breeze from the observation window brushed her hair, as if the universe itself was acknowledging her words. Somewhere far away among the stars, the memory of humanity endured. The galaxy had learned a lesson it had almost forgotten. Peace must be protected, and heroes may appear when least expected. And as new explorers prepared to journey into the unknown, Kira knew that one truth would guide them all. Humanity never truly dies. Its courage, its spirit, and its will endure, in every heart willing to stand when the universe demands it. For some, legends are merely stories. For others, like Kira and the Myriax, legends are reminders of what is possible when one refuses to give up. And somewhere in the endless night, Captain Daniel Holt's spirit lived on, the final proof that humans were never just fairy tales. They were and always will be warriors of the stars. The end.